David talked in his keynote about the importance of ROI and why developer communities need to prove their ROI. So I think I'm going to represent the other side. I'm the manager who needs to decide whether to invest in community or in other things, and maybe show you a little bit about my thought process and how I analyze what should be the investment in community. Does that make sense? I also have slides about New Zealand, but if we can talk about other things if you like. So this is me, or at least a mental model of myself. I admit I have a little bit less hair. But my role is to, my team's role is to connect between Slack and startups and developers and partners outside of Slack. And to turn Slack from a messaging platform into a platform, an operating system where work happens. So to get developers to build on Slack and to make Slack a command line for your work. Before that, I worked in small companies like Google. Some of my team are here. Say hello. Hey, I love you. I usually hire people who are much smarter than me, so they're the guys that you should talk to. And before that, I worked for a smaller startup called Microsoft, and I did the same thing there. So I've been in developer relations for about 15 years. Oh, man. So what are we going to talk about in the next 9 minutes? Why developer relations? How do we do Devrel? And learning, okay? So why developer relations? I think this is something interesting and that we don't talk about. You don't need developer relations. In a lot of use cases, developer relations are not the right thing to do, right? And when you go to a company, you need to look to the founder straight in the face and ask them, why are you doing the investment in developer relations? Because if it's not in their core business, you're going to suffer during your life, right? When I joined Slack, I looked at Stuart, who's our CEO, and I asked him, hey, why do you want to pay so much money for developer relations? We're like pampered engineers who can talk to people, right? You don't really need us in a lot of use cases. And if you're doing this as an afterthought, hey, we will have this API and we will have this community and everything will be okay, that's probably a disaster waiting to happen, right? So you need to be very thoughtful about choosing the right strategy to accommodate developer relations. And what Stuart told me is, hey, I want to turn Slack from a messaging tool to an operating system. And that's where it clicks. That's where you need the ecosystem. That's where it makes sense to have a developer relations. And we started developer relations because we actually found that we needed to. We started out by doing this ecosystem by ourselves. We hired engineers to build all these integrations, and then slowly we found out that this doesn't work, and that we needed all these developers to build on our platform. So we actually learned the hard way that we need developer relations. Okay, so why is it so important? And coming back to our mission, not a very Silicon Valley mission because it's simple, right? We don't want to change people's life by creating distributed databases around the world, right? We want to make people's work life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. And how do we do that? There's a lot of tools that offer the same mission. We want to do that by creating an ecosystem and connecting all these apps and turning Slack into where work happens, right? Connecting all these tools and services. How many of you use Slack? Wow, you're awesome. Thank you. Okay. So this is the vision. The vision is that you will have all these tools and services connected into Slack. And this is why I chose this role. So how do we do Devrel? We do Devrel by having a Devrel org, which I lead, which has engineering, and engineering provide developer tools. They do SDKs and they do debugging, and they're actually a product of their own. They build a product of their own. We also have partnership advocacy, which is super important. We launched with Amazon, with Microsoft, with Google, with all the big players. So you need people to actually work on one-on-one, not a community again. This is still not a community. These are people working one-on-one with our audience, with developers. And then we have content and community, which are technical writers and community managers. And this is the mental model I have in my mind when I think about developer relations. We start by inspiring developers, so that's the awareness stage, and then we educate them and make them proficient. And then we enable them with tools and services. And then a very important thing, we get back the feedback, back to the product team to make the product better. So I'm a true believer that in our profession, you need to be an advocate and not an evangelist. Because an evangelist is like, praise the Lord, we have this platform. And an advocate is, hey, this is a useful platform, but if it's shit, please tell me so I can go back to my product team and make it better. Right? So there's a distinct difference between an advocate and an evangelist, and I really, really urge you to think as an advocate and not as an evangelist. This is the data that I'm looking at. I have a funnel. Just like the sales funnel, I have a developer funnel. Okay, this is the most important thing, and I actually have numbers associated with each step of this funnel. Right? So today I'm going to present to Stuart, and I'm going to show him, like week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, how have we moved our developers through the funnel? How have we made them interested? How have we made them to actually build over something? How do we make them to actually publish the application? And is it used and installed, which is super important, right? If you don't have the funnel, you can't tie what you're doing to business objectives. Now, this is the most important. This will be at the test at the end of my presentation. Community doesn't influence the bottom of the funnel. Community influences the top of the funnel, the awareness, right? I was just talking to Adriana, and if your mission and if your business mission is to create apps, amazing apps, community won't generate amazing apps. Community will create awareness and educate developers about how to do it. But if you do a hackathon and at the end of that hackathon, you say, hey, we're going to have these awesome 5 apps, that's not going to happen. Okay, so really tie it into what is measurable, right, and what is impactful, and don't tie it into the end of the funnel. Tie it into the beginning of the funnel. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we are very, very focused on funnel, and we are very focused on partners because right now we're in the phase of like creating quality integrations. So a lot of my money is now going into the partnership team and less to the community team. But I still keep a very strong eye on the community team because I'm always thinking about how do I make the funnel? What's the funnel? And if the funnel like dies at the community stage, then my partnership team won't have any partners to work with in like another couple of months. We're good? Okay. Okay. Is he okay? Okay. Okay, cool. Do you understand my meaning? So the way I see a community is like an investment. We're 2 minutes in. Okay, I'm going to move forward. Okay, so lessons learned. This is going to be in the tests. Segment your developers. Okay, be very, very certain to address the developers. Make sure that your community is not just cookie eaters, right? You know what cookie eaters are? People who go to your events to eat cookies. If they're that, they'll poison the well. So make sure that you actually work with the quality end of the funnel. Think about breadth and depth. Okay, if you're a community manager, don't do a lot of one-on-one. Do a lot of scale. Focus on high value. Okay, very, very important. I'm going to say it again and again, even if it takes more than 2 minutes. Focusing on the high-value developers is the most important thing. We worked in GDG, and the GDG teams that were really, really successful, the Google developer groups that were really successful, had the top developers in them, being a part of the community. Measure the right things, and advocacy versus evangelism. Where you are in the org is super important. So there was a single moment in time where I made the right choice. It doesn't happen often. But my manager asked me, do you want to be under business or do you want to be under product? And I said, product. I want to be under product. Because if you look at developer relations, it's different it's in different orgs in many, many companies. And Microsoft was under sales, which was a disaster because we were measured on sales. In Google, it's product, right? Or a product eng. In Slack, it's very much under product. So I report to April Underwood, who's the VP of product. And this makes my life a lot easier because there's alignment between what I want to do and what the company wants to do. Always think about money and how do you derive the money and how do you actually improve. And last thing, you know what's with him? What's in it for me? Okay, so always think about what's in it for the developers. How can you actually, if you say, hey, we have this amazing API and now you have to use it, doesn't work that way. You need to create and always think about what's in it for me, for my community, in order to get them excited. I think of a model of like 3 things of my community. How do I make them, how do I think about fun? How do I think about growth? And how do I think about belonging? If you solve these 3 problems, if it's fun, if it makes me grow as a person, and if it makes me feel that I belong to something, then I have an amazing, amazing community. Thank you very much.